Welcome to the next episode of the podcast. I'm here with Fred Sprinkle. Super pumped about this. Fred and I worked together many years ago. Well, not really. 2 years ago.
Maybe 3 or 4.
It has
It's
been many years
ago.
This is an accurate description.
Yep.
Fred is an awesome animator, storyteller, just a cool dude. Broke off from work, sold everything. Very similar. I'd like to think that our family kind of inspired a little bit of this for you guys.
I think so. That's fair
they
to
kind
say.
of like did the same thing. Sold everything, just quit his job, and then bought a tiny Airstream though. So that's the difference there.
Very tiny.
But you guys are traveling a lot. And so, yeah, we're just going to jump into it with everybody. We kind of start from the very beginning all the way back to where you were born, what child life was like, and all of that.
All right. That's good. Well, should I look at you?
Yeah,
or this
look
camera?
at me.
Okay. Good. So, I'm not sure where I was conceived.
You could call your mom.
I'm guessing it was actually on a boat in Mexico.
Would not be surprised by this.
It's probably my parents were kind of hippies, but
Wait, is that real? Like, do you actually think maybe you
Oh,
were
yeah,
in Mexico?
no, I'm pretty sure I was probably conceived on a boat in like Monterey, California or something.
okay.
I don't know. That's just what I'm guessing.
Yep.
Because before my mom figured out she was pregnant, my parents were they were gonna sail around the world. That was their dream. They left everything. They had a 36-foot wooden sailboat, beautiful, named Halo. I think it's for sale right now. You can buy it.
Whoa.
And then let me have a ride. And yeah, they left everything and they hit the ocean. They were going down. They were going to go to the Panama Canal. They were going to go through like to the Caribbean and stuff. And I guess they were going to just keep going.
Just keep going.
And in Mexico, my mom started to get really like seasick, right? But it was actually morning sickness. And
Dang.
Yep. So I kind of threw a wrench in my parents' adventure lifestyle, and they basically turned around and came back to Washington eventually. Yeah, and then I was born, and after the hospital, I went to a boat, back to that boat.
Yeah, that was the home.
That was home.
Yeah.
There was no other home. That was it. My parents worked in like the yacht charter agents company for a yacht charter company, and they that was home. When I was 3, we moved into a trailer, into like one of those old like corrugated steel or whatever, like 80s trailers, and we lived in a trailer park, like with a bunch of savory people all around, but they were really nice to me as a kid. I had good memories of that place. I remember I was an entrepreneur from my youth, actually, not more of an artist, I guess. I would paint old like soup cans and then try to sell them from our trailer.
Nice.
When people would come around. And so the question, like, why were we in a trailer? My dad was working on a bigger boat because I came along, so he's like, I think we need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
That was a Jaws reference if you didn't catch it.
No.
Okay.
Totally missed it. Still don't even think I get it.
Okay, you should go watch Jaws. That'll be funnier. There we go. So my dad built a bigger boat. He built a 44-foot.
Built
it. Like he had the hull made out of fiberglass. This was fiberglass this time.
Yeah.
And then after the hull, basically he built everything.
Dang.
Over years. It took years.
Yeah.
And by the time I was like 6, we could move on, even though it wasn't done. And so, yeah, I lived on a boat for like 18, 19 years.
Wow.
And
in Anacortes.
In Anacortes.
The whole time.
Whole time except the winters. The winters, my parents, they couldn't fully give up the whole like adventure thing.
Yeah.
And so every winter we would get in a little, we had a Ford pickup truck and a camper that goes on top of it.
Yep.
And we'd get into that thing, and we would go down to Mexico.
Oh, nice.
To like just like travel around to surf. And so basically, yeah, I grew up every winter. They take me out of public school. I went to public school. They take me out for a few months. my mom would homeschool me while we were traveling,
Dang.
and we go down, mainland Mexico and then Baja sometimes, and
That's
just
like not a thing anymore. You can't just pull your kid out
I
just for a
hear
couple
that,
months
yeah.
anymore.
I don't know if it was a thing back then, but they did it.
Yeah, but it's like it wasn't.
it
But
was-
they could at least
they-
do it.
yeah.
Now we can't do it.
yeah.
Unfortunately.
You probably tried. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we were living. Yeah, for 3 months out of the year, we were living in this camper in Mexico, and just I've got so many memories of, like, it sounds kind of corny. Actually, first of all, a couple families would sometimes come with us, so we
Nice.
would travel together, and I've got so many memories of like playing bowling with coconuts on the
Yeah.
beach and things like that.
Yeah.
Like building forts on the beach in the sand, and having, every morning having like a truck come up full of fresh baked goods
Yeah.
and fresh like corn tortillas and stuff, and you buy them out of the
That's
truck, and then like a couple hours later another truck comes by with veggies and fruit, and
Yeah.
you buy those out of that truck. And yeah, it was amazing. I'm super thankful for.
Are you an only child then?
Yes.
And then I know you speak Spanish now. Did you
Kind
speak
of.
back then?
I mean, I
And
was
did your
learning.
parents?
Didn't really. My dad pretends he speaks
Okay.
Spanish, which is good. My dad's fearless, so he just goes for it.
Yeah.
And like, he doesn't, any language he can communicate
Nice.
without words.
Without words.
yeah.
Perfect.
And yeah, so
At what point did it, as a kid, were you like, oh, I live like a way different life than everybody else? Was that early on, or did that not like come up in your mind until later?
that's a good question. I feel like I didn't realize it at least until like middle school
Okay.
or something. I think it was just so normal. When you're a kid, whatever you
Right.
do is normal,
Exactly.
which for good or bad. And I mean, this was for good. Yeah, I loved it. I loved our life. I think I had like the best life ever from, I'd say, like birth to middle school.
Yeah.
And then middle school is just weird and had nothing to,
Yeah.
at no fault to my parents, or like, it was just weird,
What do
like,
you mean? I
awkward.
don't know what you mean.
Maybe
what
it's like-
exactly do you mean?
I mean, have you seen that movie 8th Grade?
No.
Okay. For people who have,
Yeah.
I think they'll get like, I don't know, growing up, maybe it's growing up as an only child. I was super shy. And
Yeah.
so like making friendships felt difficult. And just when you're in middle school, you're trying to like figure out who you are. And into high school, I just didn't, even middle school and high school years were not my favorite. I think
Yeah.
like 5th and 6th grade, when I went to the public school, I had the best teacher ever. His name was Mr. Bean. And every day was amazing. We'd walk into class, he'd be playing Patsy Cline on the record player.
Nice.
And then he'd like teach us how to make soup that day. And
Yeah.
we'd learn math through like making soup and stuff.
Right.
And he'd teach us, we did like wood carving in class. The whole public school class had
Nice.
knives, and we were carving.
Yeah.
And it was
That's
such a
awesome.
time of wonder. But then out of that into middle school was just such a, like, so different,
Right.
because that was such a safe place, such a
Right.
exciting, every day was so interesting. And then middle school just felt so institutionalized or whatever.
Yeah.
And so much less freedom and really creativity. And yeah, I think those were some dark years, I feel like I'm getting emotional here, but no, those were,
Yeah.
middle school and high school were just, there's some dark years, some depression there. And
Like, did you have no friends, or did you have
had-
your one friend?
I had some
or-
great friends.
Yeah.
I think there's just like the growing pains. Yeah, I had some really, really great people that were very, very good to me. And yeah, that was some. I guess I was very relieved when I was able to start running Start, which is in
At what-
Washington, which is where you can do
Yeah.
some of your high school at a college. So I was able to go. I was
What
able
year
to
did
get
you
out
do
of high
that?
school. I did that my senior year.
Oh, okay.
Got out of high school, went to
Full-time
Skagit
running
Valley.
Start.
Yep, Skagit Valley Community College, and
So you never enjoyed your high school years?
Not
The
like
three that
really.
you
I
were
mean,
there.
you know, there's times that were fun, and
Yeah.
you know, hanging out with family and friends was fun. But like the school part, the social school
Yeah.
part, some people are really into like sports or
Right.
activities. I just in middle school and high school, it was hard for me to kind of like, I think, yeah, struggling with trying to figure out who I was anyway, and then these other activities, I wasn't into them. And I think even creatively, I think there's a lie that comes along maybe when kids are like 12 years old, because maybe until they're 12 or 13,
Yep.
everything they do, there's so much wonder.
Yeah.
You know, we've got kids, and
Yeah.
everything they do 100%,
Mm-hmm.
and no one can stop them. So
and they're
you know,
pumped about it.
they're pumped
they want to
about it.
show other people.
Exactly. They want to show, like, look at my drawing.
Super vulnerable stuff for adults.
Yes.
Just natural, easy.
Easy.
No
yes.
thought even.
Exactly. It's like their native language is creativity and wonder.
Vulnerability.
And vulnerability.
as
Yeah.
Yeah, those
I agree.
three things.
And I think creatively, even like creatively and spiritually, up until I was like 12 or 13, and somehow those are connected. That was like so free flowing, right?
Yeah.
But then this middle school comes, and all of a sudden there's so much like negative thoughts about like, am I good enough? Is my work? I remember even drawing, that I loved drawing. I would draw like spaceships,
Mm-hmm.
diagrams, like where the engines were and where people ate, like for hours, right? But something happens, you get into middle school or whatever, and it's like you see some kid that's better at drawing than you, and you're like, well, I guess since I can't draw like a perfect human figure,
Right.
I guess I'm not supposed to draw. And then you tell that to yourself, I guess drawing's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, if I can't make the perfect basket, I guess I'm not supposed to play basketball. At least not all kids struggle
Right.
with this, but I think this is something that maybe some like introverts or only children
Yep.
do, or I don't,
I think most people.
or maybe most people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was like, I think that was huge. I think it stopped my creativity for a
Yeah.
few years, you know, and it really stopped even spiritually. I think like I didn't grow up around a church, but I did start going to a church when I was like 13. And I think that was really good. I think like I would see it as like almost like God was beginning to woo me. However, like that environment of maybe I needed to get into it a little more smooth or something. Let me rephrase that. Like
Yeah.
a religious environment
Right.
sometimes is not the place where creativity or
Right.
wonder thrive.
Right.
And I think I had already kind of like lost some of that wonder and creativity or something. And then stepping into this religious environment, everyone there was amazing. But I think the atmosphere, there's just something about it that it didn't help. Those things didn't thrive there either. And I knew like I loved God as a kid. Like I was really into, like, I felt like I remember having these experiences of like, you know, the way the light flickered through trees, or like being in the woods and feeling this like feeling of this like divine feeling, you know, of
Yeah.
like God is near. But then
How much were your
Mhm.
parents?
they had grown up like borderline religious, you know, like they weren't, they had been
Like they're not
Catholic
looking
and
at the
Anglican.
light shimmering through and talking
No,
to you
like,
about.
No, we would do like prayers and stuff at night
Yeah.
or whatever, but like, and like the family believed in God, but it wasn't until, you know, when I was in middle school, we all started going to church, and we all started to like be more interested in the like idea of God or of
Right.
Jesus, or what it means to have a personal faith. I think that was actually really good. It's just like, for me, it took a long time to get back to that wonder. And maybe,
Yeah.
you know, I'm still on that journey of that, like,
Yeah.
oh, that maybe God is present within those things as a child that made us come alive. You know, like
Mhm.
those things that we look at our kids and they're so, you know, excited about trying something new, or about, you know, their artwork or something. And you know that they're just feeling alive in that.
Yeah.
And as adults, it's so easy to kind of have that part of our hearts kind of like disintegrate away, right?
Yeah.
And I think the call is, I think where God woos us to is back towards that, being in that place of like, you know, of being aware of the presence of God
Right.
in some of these things, in wonder. And
Yeah.
that's a long journey, right? Because it's
And
I don't know,
just being yourself,
being
right?
being yourself,
Like being comfortable being
who you
who
are.
you actually are.
Yep.
Which I think is interesting hearing you talk about, like once you get into middle school, those thoughts, because it's like that's
That's a
when
good point.
society turns into
Correct.
this thing and starts saying you need to grow up and you
Mhm.
need to see how it actually works
Right.
and where
right.
you fit in and the role that you play. So it's actually similar to this analogy of like church life and this. It's all the same. And it's like when you take out the wonder of it and the vulnerability part of it, people like that because then everyone knows the outcome. Dude, if you just keep being like a kid, nobody knows what you're going to do or what you're going to do or create or how that's going to affect how the system works. And so, and I don't think it's totally not an intentional thing. Like, I don't feel like adults are trying to get this out, but I do think we're lacking in the understanding of the ramifications of the systems we put into place.
Oh yeah, I feel
and
that. Yeah.
the way that we reward or punish people, and it just sets the tone. As a middle schooler, most of us get to that point where we're like, oh,
This is how
this is weird, which is like never used to be, which is strange, and now all of a sudden it is. But that just makes it so much harder to be like creative and be yourself. That's the thing. It's like everyone is creative
Oh yeah. Yeah.
in their own way. And I think a lot of the times, like the creativity gets just pushed out of us and just compressed inside. And that's actually then rewarded when you're an adult. It's like,
Because
Good job.
you've grown up.
yeah, you've grown up.
So,
You've done the right things. You graduated high school.
Yeah.
You went to college. You got a degree in something that's actually going to make you a living so you can support a family. Then you buy a house, or you get married, then you buy a house, then you have kids.
Yeah.
And it's just like those things, awesome. You're killing it. That's best case scenario, which is like a really mediocre.
It's a mediocre journey, or if
Yeah.
you will. Yeah. It makes me think of like a lot of people get on like, all these millennials living in their parents' basements or whatever.
Right.
And they say like, well, they never grew up. And I don't think that's the problem. I think
No.
there's different problems of like, it's a scary world out there to try to like survive in, like relationally or emotionally, not like physically necessarily, but like, I don't know why, but I don't think people are like struggling to grow up.
Yeah.
Maybe there were two growing up
Yeah.
or something, like, one thing that was huge in my journey was around this time where I felt probably the darkest as far as like, who am I? Where's God in all this? Where do I fit in the world? Actually, it was a guy through this church I was going to, but a guy named Aaron Bryant started to pursue me, and in terms of like with friendship, and he's like, hey, you want to come hang out? He had a wife and family, and so he started inviting me over to his house. We would watch Alias,
Nice.
Jennifer Garner is forever Alias. So whenever you see her in a movie, she's
Yep,
Alias.
that's-
Yeah. And so that was like super meaningful because
Yeah.
to have somebody outside of your family
Yeah.
go after you and say, hey, I care about you.
Yeah.
Like for me, I think that helped. That was like the thing that God used to begin the journey towards healing,
Yeah.
even healing things like creativity.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things with that is I feel like I'm in such a debt, but it doesn't feel like that. I'm so thankful for the seeds that this guy Aaron planted because he was also, I wasn't even into film. I didn't know what to do with my creativity and all that.
Right.
He was into filmmaking. That was like his thing. And this is back.
Yeah.
We had like Super or Mini 8, not Super 8, but like the, you know, Mini 8 tapes or whatever those.
DV or
Mini DV, like.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when the 3-chip cameras were coming out, and that's what he was excited to get a 3 CD.
Like, yes. Look at the quality at 480p.
That's right. He got a PD170, Sony
Nice.
PD170. It had internal ND filters though, I think, so,
Nice.
which we still
That's
don't have on some of these cameras. But anyway,
we can't get. It's just crazy to like hear you talking about this experience you had with this, like an adult in the community who like took you under his wing, and how that completely changes everything in your life.
completely.
And it's like, because I experienced that as well when I look back on my life, and I'm like, if it weren't for those people, like how different my life could look in a negative way. Like
Seriously.
horribly tragic is easily the outcome, and how the ramifications of like a caring adult in the community who goes, I have time that I can give you and invest in you. Because even as kids, I think it makes sense pretty instantaneously when somebody is like, hang out with me. And you know, like, oh, they're not like a counselor at the school. They're not like, there's no incentive for this person to want to do this other than that they actually care about me. And then for them to be deliberate in that and like helping you go through, like potentially this person noticed like that you were not doing great. You know what I mean? Not that you were doing like so horrible as like, I'm gonna fix this kid, but like, okay, this kid might need some like help. And then just through spending time, he probably noticed like, wow, Fred's like super creative, and oh, weird, like he doesn't have a creative outlet, which then he did video, and like that's just crazy because there was a dude in my life, but it was with photography. I was doing video in high school, and I met this guy that was a photographer, and he took me under his wing and just started showing me everything about photography.
That's cool.
like, yeah, if it weren't for him, like we wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Oh,
that's
totally.
what's crazy. Same with you, with this guy.
I mean, if it weren't for him, I might be dead. I don't know. You know,
Right.
like I, right, like.
How over-exaggerated of a statement is that?
I don't.
Or
think
is that
it's
for real?
I don't think it's that far, man. Like I don't know.
Like when you're saying like you had some dark years, are we talking like it was pretty bad?
I never got suicidal, but it was bad. I was depressed, and I just wonder if I would have kept going down that road.
Right.
Who knows where it would have gone? But thankfully, you know, I'm just so thankful, and it's not to put any like weight or pressure on. That's just how it was. And, you know, a lot of kids in high school are depressed. Like, right? I think like, I mean, at least a little bit, or at least at times. I would say
there's definitely a percentage.
Right. And so, yeah, I just think it was so huge. And I think you're right. I think Aaron noticed that I had these issues, or that I had questions. And, I don't know if he knew. And I don't know, you just feel things different in high school. So I don't know how depressed I was by some like quantitative scale, but
I mean, everything
felt scary or whatever, you know, and that's part of, I guess that's pretty common. But yeah, this guy Aaron, he started to teach me about what he knew, and then he invited me to join him in learning, which is huge. So I could come over to his house and edit. We'd go film some dumb things at first, and we'd edit. And then, you know, we started to, he invested in me and believed in me, and he got After Effects, and I started to learn that started learning motion graphics. And I remember the day that we got our first like paid gig. Yeah. I think it was like $200. It was for San Juan Airlines. And
oh my gosh. That's awesome.
And we went up in an airplane. I think it was like with the PD-170 or something.
Hey, you got that out of it.
We got that. Yep. And I got to do, this is like 2006 maybe, or 2004, or that's on the video. I don't know when we shot it.
Yeah.
And that was my first thing that I got to do motion graphics for like a real client, you know, if you will. And
are you a senior in high school at this point, or you're out of high school?
I'm out of high school. I'm in between high school and college. I took a
Gotcha.
couple of years off.
Yeah.
So we must have shot it in 2004 then, or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember when we shot it, but yeah, I took a few years off after I finished my it was between Skagit Valley College and Western. So anyway, those years, we worked together, we made films. We made a full-length documentary, Wrong Way to Hope, about young adult cancer survivors. And that was an amazing experience. This guy Aaron he's also like a whitewater raft guide and stuff, and so he's super athletic and very knowledgeable about all these outdoorsy stuff. And so he took me on this trip, and he's one of those persons who can like get up at 4 a.m. stay up until like 2 a.m. not eat or drink anything for like not go to the bathroom for like 4 days. And he's like totally like happy the whole time.
Yeah.
Where, I'm after like a couple hours, I'm like, is it like snack time? Or like, we make some more coffee, or, a little more like, I don't know, like a little more Hobbit like, but he just goes for it. And so it was fun. Got to, film that, did a bunch with him. He was the main film guy, did a bunch of post work on that.
Nice.
I don't even know how to I wrote songs for it. I don't even write songs, but we needed like a soundtrack. So I got out all like GarageBand or whatever and made some music. And
that's awesome.
I mean, I've always loved music, but it's, you just, when you're like just learning and when you have time, right? When you're young, especially, you have so much time to like try new things. Right. Anyway.
At this point, are you still living with your parents? Are they still on a boat?
They had moved off the boat by then to care for my grandma had Alzheimer's. Okay. So she was living with us, and that was a whole nother adventure for all of us, the whole family, helping as she kind of deteriorated mentally.
Yeah. You lived in the same house then?
We lived in the same house, yep. And she would speak other languages and stuff.
Not real languages.
Well, she taught for a while on a Native American reservation.
Oh, okay.
And I think she was speaking Chippewa Cree.
Okay. But you don't know.
Yep. All I do remember she would, this is like 2005 or 6 or maybe 7, she would watch TV, and when Hillary Clinton would come on, she would just say, "Oh, that woman," something like that. She was amazing. But also really, Alzheimer's really weird, and people change a lot. Like if people that are normal, like them and you like them, and then when they get Alzheimer's, things get weird sometimes. But my parents, it's cool that they did that. They did most of that work, and so then I was still with them in a house at this point, and then in like 2005, I guess it is. It must have been,
who cares?
Anyway,
at some point.
In like 2005, I went to Western Washington, up here in Bellingham, and went there for 3 years. I was still doing video and film stuff sometimes with this guy, Aaron, and doing my own just fun like little design. I got into graphic design more just for fun, and I didn't go to Western for art.
What'd you go for?
I took Spanish language and literature.
That's what you were going to college for?
Mm-hmm. Went to college for that.
That's great.
And then design and video was like my side job during college. So,
wait, what was the goal of when you finished school? Then what with this degree?
I think I was gonna I don't know what I was thinking. I think I was going to teach English or something.
Gotcha.
And I like I've always loved Mexico. I grew up going to Mexico, so I just love the culture and the people, and I love the language. It's a beautiful language, and
so a teaching thing was a
thing
in your
academic
mind for
kind of academia kind of thing. I love the literature, and I don't know. I just think I liked it, so I was like, hey, I'm gonna take that. And I was doing design and video stuff on the side, and then when I kept practicing skills at motion design, and so when college was over, when I graduated in 2009, I was still practicing motion design, getting better at it. And I think it was Corbin Watkins. You should probably have him in here next.
Yeah.
But I think Corbin Watkins was like, dude, this company in downtown Bellingham, they've got a position for motion designer. I was like, okay, cool. I'll apply for that. And I did
Nice.
it. And Nick hired me
Heck yeah.
somehow. And
And then
I got to work with you for years, or few years at least. Yeah. And man, I'll tell you what, that was like my art school.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So being at Faith Life was just so much learning of, Nick is such a good teacher when it comes to like pushing you to do better at your craft. And so he was our boss. And so he just pushed me to get better at things. He saw where I was good at, and then he saw where I was needed growth. And he's like, dude, you need to learn topography better. So I like dove into topography for a few years. And dude, you got to get better at directing. You got to grow in like pitching and, working with management and stuff like that. And you got to be able to like,
and then you get put into leadership position.
Yeah. So then
you got a whole team.
Had a motion team working there, and I was so thankful. All those guys,
Dude, that was like
are amazing.
Way better than school.
Oh, it was. It was so much more fun than school.
And it was real. We were actually working on real projects.
Us dollars.
And we were making a company money too.
Yeah.
Everything we made, we were like pretty.
It was good work.
It was like, hey, if this isn't going to make money, then you aren't going to work out.
Yep.
So there was like actual real life pressure and being judged if it's like, is it worth it? At what point is it? And all of that, as opposed to theory and ideas and like kind of like, oh yeah, we can do this and like do a project for what school? And then what? It's like, there's no real deadline. Like,
oh, right. The deadline thing. Like customers are going to see this at this deadline.
And like millions of people.
Right.
That was cool too.
That was.
We're just like running around in this basement.
Yeah, totally.
Making stuff. And it's like, whoa, this is actually going to go in front of a ton of people.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. That was the most I stumbled into. Like I was doing wedding photography and stuff.
Right.
Somebody from the company, same kind of thing, was like, yo, they're looking for someone that makes videos.
Yep.
And I was like, just quit all my jobs. And I was like, finally a photographer. But video was still like this thing. I was like, man, I still really want to
I love doing
that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, Faith Life was like my college.
Seriously, that's
and more. It was way more. It taught me so much.
It's just like
it was awesome.
I can't express enough how it makes me wish that when I had, I mean, you can't go back because I wasn't in the right spot for it. But when I had gotten out of like community college, that I would have like interned at an agency or something. Yeah. Even for not any money, for free. Yeah. Just to learn. Like, but thankfully, I got to work at Faith Life. Yeah. And, the things we learn there, man, and everywhere from like technical skills to like, and even to like business stuff, like like working with Ruben. Yeah. I don't know if he's been in here yet, but Ruben is just so good at thinking strategically. Like, maybe I'm good at like creative ideas, but Ruben's like, you got to put that through a filter of a business. So how's a business gonna, how's a boss gonna think about this, or how are we gonna fund this thing? Yep. And so just learning from him, I feel like I still need to learn from him some of that stuff, but on how to like ask for money and how to like,
and who's the person that needs to be approving things? How does that work? And all of those steps in an actual company. Because then even now when you're out of a company, it's like, I know how this works. You're not the decision maker.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And actually, I need to equip you with information so that you can now pitch this to your boss, but I'm not even going to be there. So you actually need to do as good of a job as I am so that you can get this approved, because I know you want it, but your boss could care less. So it's like, that was all this learning how a company works. And getting paid during the whole time, as opposed to all these other suckers paying other people to work on fake projects. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry.
I mean,
it's I guess whatever works for you.
So,
But for a lot of people, I think they should just take
Yep.
an internship for free.
Yep.
For a year even.
Yeah.
How is that going to not be beneficial?
oh yeah, go
First try to
intern.
get a job somewhere. Get someone to pay you to do it.
Yeah, I mean
But
that's
if you're
great.
not
if you
getting
can't
it-
get that, go intern
Yeah.
for some. If you're into like design or video,
Right.
you got to track. And I'm gonna say this. I'm saying it to myself for my future self because
Yeah.
there's things in my life that I need to track down the person, but you need to go track down the person
Yeah.
that you want to work for and like
Mm-hmm.
make yourself like work for them for free or something.
Yeah.
And I need to do that now.
Yeah.
I need to go out of this place and go do that for my
Go
next
find some
step. But
people. That's the problem. I don't want to work for anybody else.
well, I mean, I don't want to work for anyone else either.
Yeah.
But in
But other
terms
people
of
that
like,
you want to surround yourself with, where you
Right.
want to hang out with, the people that you
Right.
look up at, it's like I'm looking at, well, how can I be one of those people?
right, especially creatively,
Yeah.
like who's like the next version of yourself when it comes to
Yeah.
what you want to learn. And that's a good segue to like,
Yep.
we left Faith Life.
Yes. Let's
And-
jump right into this. This will be great.
Why?
Why?
Well,
It was so awesome. Why?
that's a great question. Well, so I didn't talk about my family, right?
Right.
Yet. So I need to talk about that first because it's all tied in. So while I right before I started Faith Life, I got married to Erin, and this is like in 2011, I think.
I think.
Yes,
Wah,
2011.
wah.
And we lived in this little apartment. I could walk to work, walk to Faith Life, and I think it was like difficult for Erin because that I worked at Faith Life at first because she is an adventurer. That's like 10 times more than me. Like Erin would be cool if I was like, okay, we already live in a trailer. She'd be cool if I'd be like, let's sell everything and just live out of backpacks in Europe.
Yeah.
And she'd probably be like, let's go now.
Yes.
And so that is so amazing to have somebody as your partner who like supports that kind of thing, or who even is like pulling you
Yeah.
even further into adventure, And so she's always been even more adventurous, even though she didn't grow up like I did adventuring. She
Right.
did, actually she did. That's a lie. But
I mean, to the extent of you.
not to that same extent, but
Not many people have that
has
experience.
she has the heart that is
Yes.
like very adventurous. And yeah, and so I think Faith Life was hard for her some of the time. I think she loved that I was growing and learning there, and she so supported me in like that process.
Yeah.
But I think secretly she's like, I think her dream, I know her dream because we talked about it before we got married, was we were planning to go like live in Europe or live in like China and teach English or something like
Yeah.
that. We were going to go do that, like take 5 years and like travel the world and do that crazy life,
Yeah.
that everyone dreams of, all like the hipster, dream heaven or whatever.
Hipster heaven.
Right. And I had said I was into that too. And I was interested in that, but then I got this opportunity to,
Yeah.
to work. And I think that was kind of a letdown for her. And I don't know why, but it's like the whole time. And she like was glad. She was glad that I took the job and like was so into it and supportive. But I think the whole time I knew that, like, I think the thing in Erin's heart, that desire for adventure, is like very important in our family.
Yeah.
Like I think that is something that can't be overlooked, or that can't be, even though we're pretty stable right now. We ended up buying a house. We ended up, but the whole time it's like it's like almost like I made a promise, and like the time was coming, like the clock was ticking, right?
Right.
To do something crazy.
Right.
And we started to joke about it, like,
Yeah.
like what if we just like like sold everything and like lived in a trailer.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was you guys that gave us that idea. Probably.
That's what you were talking about. And then I was like, peace, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh my God, you just sold everything.
He did it.
And then you guys
Yeah.
are like, well, if he could do it.
Maybe we could too. Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember, but maybe it was. Yeah. Maybe it was after you guys did it. That's what it was. We talked about that. Yeah. I think it was after you guys did it. I mean, we had talked about other crazy
Right.
ideas, but I think after you guys did it, we're like, oh, dude, this is actually doable.
Yeah.
And we, you know, by that time we had 2 kids like you guys,
Yeah.
2 boys, and Isaiah and Andre, and they, well, kids don't want to just sit around a house.
No.
Like they're
Dude,
up for whatever. Like, especially
Yeah.
like our kids are. Like my kids get bored like
Yeah.
playing one thing for like an hour. They want to go they're always yeah. So we were like around that time I was doing motion design, right? For Faith Life, leading a team, and that was really fun. But at Faith Life we started to work on documentary films, which I loved. So fun.
Yeah.
And I had done this documentary film before with Aaron, and I was
Right.
like, man, I love making films. I love making, even if they're not full length, just like the storytelling. And I was like, at the time I was very interested in a couple subjects. One was because of what Aaron had done. Aaron had been on this spiritual journey, right? Of like, what does it mean to experience God being near to you, like in a tangible sense? So, you know, some people, maybe it's like the charismatic tradition or the contemplative tradition where they're, where, you know, people are experiencing in their bodies, this idea of the presence of God or the Spirit of God. And so Aaron was exploring, like, you know, cause a lot of times church is very heady, especially
Right.
in America, especially this area in the Northwest. A lot of church is very heady. It's either very like the Bible says exactly this, and
Right.
like you can't question our particular way of seeing it.
Yeah.
Or it's like we need to use like all of these creative theologies to like figure out like what the original authors might have been intending, which is actually probably really smart. You should probably do that. But
Right.
but then sometimes it's missing this idea of like, what about now? Like, yeah, God was back then, he did things, you know, Jesus did these very important things back then. And that's what we look towards those to learn from, and those like change our life. But like, what is like God trying to say now to people? What's he trying to say, like, first to me, and like in my experience, like, and so that, you know, the contemplative and some of the charismatic traditions get into this idea of like, you know, what's God trying to speak or to say, and can you experience him? And so Aaron was was exploring that because she'd had some of these experiences, and I was very intrigued by that because that was kind of foreign to me.
Yeah.
And so I started to look into that, and there's something about it that I felt like was so life-giving or healing, because I felt like so much of my faith was cerebral in terms of like thoughts about God, theology, even like, you know, arguing theological points about what this part of the Bible means, or what these people think about this, what the Reformers thought about that, what the Catholic Church thinks about this, or whatever, all these
Right.
ideas. But it wasn't as grounded in like, I don't even want to use the word experience, because people's like, well, you just can't trust your experience.
Right.
But there's something even deeper than experience. There's something that even that we talked about, like when you're a child, and that like wonder and things,
Right.
ideas like wonder and beauty, and like, is God in these things? And does God speak to us through these kind of things? And like, what does it mean? What does it mean to like God's Spirit? This idea that we're told, as Christians are told, that like God's Spirit lives in you, and you're guided by the Spirit of God, and the Spirit of God leads you to have more joy, to like be at peace with your neighbors, you know, all the fruit of the Spirit. You probably
Right.
heard of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. So if you're led by the Spirit, your life is to have these fruits, these
Right.
blossomings. And so much religious experience, especially the cerebral kind, didn't seem to lead to this kind of fruit for
Right.
me. It didn't seem to make me more gentle. It didn't seem to make me more kind,
Right.
but trying to walk in, trying to listen to like God's spirit, not with your ears, but, well, there's whole books written about what that means, but,
Right.
that is the kind of like, if that's supposed to be what is so paramount in leading us towards like expressing these fruits of the spirit, is like walking in step with it, like trying to listen to this mystical idea of like the
Right.
spirit of God that's supposed to live inside of people.
And
Mhm.
which is all like crazy, right?
Totally crazy.
Right.
Insane.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's like growing up Christian and in that world and hearing all those things forever, it becomes normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, what you're saying, it's heady. It's just like, it's in
Right.
your head. But
Mm-hmm.
I think, dude, I wonder too, it'd be interesting to hear, for those of you who don't know, we worked for a company called Faith Life, which is the creators of Logos Bible software, which is like the world's leading like way to study the Bible using like really intuitive software. And so the company we worked for at one point was like 400 people and it's a for-profit company. So anybody can work there. Obviously Christians are more inclined to want to work for this
Right,
company, but
right.
there was everybody worked there. But what it did was it brought every denomination
That's true.
of the church together.
Yeah.
So I'd be like in the lunchroom and there'd be like the Orthodox are talking with the Protestants who are
Yeah.
talking and debating with the like Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time ever in my life that I was like, whoa, wait, literally all of us disagree on everything.
Right.
Like
yeah.
we all have our own, because you grow up in your own little
Your
idea
bubble.
of what all of those things mean. And then it like just started really opening my eyes to and having a way better understanding and like empathy for all the different denominations and not being like, oh, mine's the best and I'm right, which I haven't ever been that way, but like seeing how things I thought were super important for thousands of years have had many different options that are really all very valid options. And so often I heard it, there's one, and this is the right way,
This is
which
the
is
right
kind of going back to
interpretation
what
or-
you were
yeah.
saying. They wouldn't even say interpretation. It was like, this is the truth.
This is what the Bible says.
This is
right.
what the Bible says. This is the truth. Those kinds of words had been the thing that I heard forever. And now I'm sitting in rooms of like people who have PhDs, sometimes like 4 times over of specific denominations, and they're all talking to each
Right.
other.
And
in
these
like a
these
very-
aren't like Buddhists or Muslims. These are all Christians.
Yes.
Right. Like
And
and
they-
they're all very different.
and
right?
they're all pretty different. But it was cool to hear their conversations because it was always, they were just kind of talking through ideas and all these things in a way that just doesn't happen at an individual church because most churches are a denomination. So everyone's kind of talking about the same and they all kind of line up.
right.
And so that started opening my eyes to this idea of like, oh, all these things that I thought were really important, like kind of aren't as important, which is all the ideas essentially. And which kind of, started leading me towards more like what you're talking about. It's just funny to hear your life story and like kind of thinking about my life story and then how we both kind of ended up at this place at the same time. And then how you started to think a little bit differently. And I wonder if it had anything to do with that as well, where you started seeing
Yeah.
all everyone else coming together and being like, oh, I mean, literally like other denominations have different books in their Bible.
That's true.
So to
right.
say this is what the Bible says, I'm like, oh, that actually means something different for them because
right.
we don't even have those texts in our
Right.
canonized Bible.
Right.
And it's like, what? Like, wait, what does that mean?
Right.
And so like going through that whole process was really cool. I
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah, it was. I think like even that documentary Fragments we worked on.
yeah, that was the other
huge
thing. We could
because
go like,
it did 2 things for me. One, I was like, oh dude, the Bible is like really, the one we have today is very close to the original.
Right.
Like it's not just totally spurious, but it also did this thing like you said of like but like people have looked at things a lot different throughout the ages at different times.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was super interesting. Like I actually
Yeah.
went to Israel, went to dig sites,
Mm-hmm.
and we interviewed like the top scholars, numerous who are not Christians,
Right.
but they specialize in archaeology of biblical eras and times.
Mm-hmm.
And like they're talking about it in a total scientific way.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, one, it was like, frick, this text has been very documented and well taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Two, there's like a whole bunch in Israel that we haven't dug up
Oh,
because
right,
of political
yeah.
reasonings and
Yeah,
stuff. They're like,
yeah.
oh yeah, there's a whole bunch probably right in here. And I'm like, are you serious? And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but it would cause these issues and this and that. So they'll probably dig it up in 50 years from now.
Oh,
and I'm
right,
like,
yeah.
looking at this dude, and I'm like, this is like your life's work. And you're just totally fine
Mm.
that because of political problems that there could be like these texts
Mm.
that could potentially be a big deal.
Mm.
And they're just like, meh, it'll happen someday.
Right.
It's
yeah.
crazy. So there's just like, we still haven't even uncovered a ton, but there is a lot of really good. But then, yeah, like the whole process and like it's just crazy. Like so many people don't even know. It's like, dude, the Bible that we're using wasn't even canonized until like 400 years after Jesus.
Right,
So what
yeah.
were they doing for those 400 years?
Mhm.
Like, and people don't think about it,
Right.
which I think causes problems when people aren't thinking about relationships
Yeah.
and relationship, like with
Mhm.
God,
Mm-hmm.
and are just kind of doing, I mean, this is literally the same thing we were talking about like in school. Like
Yeah.
you can quickly fall into this trap of being like, just follow what you're told to do,
Right.
and kind of
Right.
suppress yourself
Mhm.
a little bit, and you're like wonder
Mm-hmm.
in even just being you. But that happens too in church. Church is an organized thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is the whole point of it. And in fact, it's like religion is the biggest unifier of human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's because of religion that hundreds of thousands of people can be unified.
Mhm.
That's
true.
a
yeah.
very new thing for any species.
Mm.
And humans have done it on a massive scale. Like we can travel to anywhere in the world and like instantaneously have a bond with somebody else who is like a believer,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
is like,
That's cool. Yeah.
that's crazy. That's
like
that's a-
family, instant
yeah.
family. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but where it can get damaging is if people forget the whole, like the basics too, like the fruits of the spirit.
Right.
So then they kind of get into little cliques and
Mhm.
groups, and they kind of just eradicate all of what they've been taught and told and should know, and just start treating people who aren't in the group differently. When it's
Right.
like, you're totally missing the whole point of everything.
Right. Yeah. It's. I think so much of religious activity that goes on is
Yeah.
is motivated by fear, right?
Yeah.
Like fear is the driving thing. People are afraid if they're honest about the Bible. If they start like, yeah, the Bible is super accurate, but people are afraid to question like, well, what about this canonization? Why do we have these books? If they even start to talk about that, they're afraid they're going to like throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
And there's so much fear that if
Yeah.
you like start to ask questions
Mm-hmm.
that you're going to lose it all, that it's a slippery slope or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you let people actually learn about these things, they might come to a slightly, I think they're going to have a more nuanced perspective. I think they're
Yeah.
actually going to trust more. I think
Of
when
course.
fear is gone, you're going to actually trust them and be like, oh, actually, okay, this is pretty accurate or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But I think there's so much fear driving people, and religion can be used, right, of a way of controlling people.
Yes.
And fear is a tactic of that, right?
Yeah.
And so, well, what does the Bible actually say? It says, you know, like that you haven't been given a spirit of fear. You know, was that
Right.
like 1 Timothy or something? But was it peace, love, and a sound mind, or of like self-control or something like that? So this
Right.
idea is like, if we're operating out of a spirit of fear, like if we're being motivated
Yeah.
by fear, if we're defending even the Bible, if we're defending God, if we're defending theology, and fear is at the root of it, then we're going to be dehumanizing people, because we're going to
Yeah.
be so afraid of losing what we feel like we hold dear,
Mm-hmm.
that we're not going to be in the spot with the fruit of the Spirit enough to be able to love people, to be able to be full
Right.
of joy, and so I think I just think that fear in religion is such a poison,
Of course.
and it's such a poison to control. And I think Jesus is right to be like, who's the only people that Jesus really gets kind of angry at? It's religious people.
It's his disciples and the Pharisees.
It's mainly the Pharisees, right?
But he would snap at his disciples too. But who didn't he ever snap at?
Regular
Like
people,
prostitutes, and the people that
yeah.
we consider like
Yeah.
horrible people.
Yeah, I'd say just everyday people, right?
Yes.
Like
Totally.
as well. I think Jesus saw there's a lot of people right now that are going away from the church or moving away from Christianity because of all this, they feel trauma from
Yeah.
that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, and what I'm saying is I feel like Jesus is I get that,
Oh, definitely.
Dude,
that's what he was going through.
right? I guess he was killed by religious people apparently.
Yeah. Right.
That's
Like he knows
apparently,
what you're going through.
right?
Straight
So
up.
if you feel like you're being killed by religious people,
Right.
then you have somebody
Yeah.
who some people say is God,
Right.
who
Crazy.
who also felt that same way, who
Totally.
got killed by religious people. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think Jesus is ready to meet you outside of religion, outside of quote unquote religion. Nothing bad with actual good religion or whatever. I don't know. People argue about that all the time, but
But that gets back into the super gray area of well, what does that mean?
Right.
What is that?
I don't wanna
Which
go
is
there
where I'm getting.
right now.
The older I'm getting, the further away from that. I'm basically, and I'm not saying I'm right. I could just care less.
Okay. Yeah.
At this point, it's we're not gonna win. They've been debating this for thousands. Way smarter people than me have been
Right.
debating this for over 2,000 years.
Yep.
So, do we really think we're gonna figure something out?
Probably not.
No.
But Jesus is ready to meet you outside of the
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
And because that's where he had to go,
Right.
and so and the sympathy he has for people that have been wounded by religious experiences
Right.
is just incredible.
Dude, I haven't even thought about this. It's super interesting because our culture has definitely been really hurt by the church, by the organized religion, because it's a lot of it. Super generalizing here. I had an amazing experience in church and had amazing people really invest in my life, and so I can't totally relate to, but I see it happening.
You see it with other people.
I
Yeah.
know that there's been really damaging things going on, some horrible, really messed up things going on, and I can easily see how that just gets the wholeness of it just gets lost. But it's interesting to then think oh yeah, Jesus was hated by the organized church of that time. There was no church. Jesus was still walking around doing his thing, but the rabbis and the religious leaders and the organization of that literally killed him.
Right.
So they probably didn't really dig what he was
Right.
talking about.
Yep.
And so I mean, he wasn't even allowed in it. That's how much I guess he was. I mean, he was a rabbi.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and he would teach at some synagogues and stuff like that. So but probably got increasingly harder during his couple years where he was with his disciples, going around being like, I'm God. And people are like, what? What?
Right.
This
yeah.
dude from the little small nothingness town,
Right.
from the illegitimate mother who was pregnant before she was even married, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or you're crazy.
Right. Right.
Like,
Yeah.
good on you for starting this crazy thing, but
Yeah.
no, we need to. And then out of fear, people start operating and getting crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and just like to the point of
Well, what about the story where Jesus heals someone
yeah,
and then the religious system comes after him because he's
Yeah.
not supposed to heal on the
that
Sabbath?
day.
They come after him to kill him.
Yeah,
And so, like, that's just super interesting,
Yeah.
even like philosophically as an idea, right?
Right.
Like, he heals somebody
right.
from a disease. He liberates them
Yeah.
from suffering,
Yeah,
brings them a wholeness. They're
Yeah.
now whole. And Jesus is bringing this person wholeness. And in that person getting wholeness, religion or the religious community, quote unquote, comes after that person,
Yeah.
comes after Jesus to kill him.
right.
That's crazy.
That's the fear.
But I feel like that's so relevant, right?
Yeah.
Like we feel that, like people
Yeah.
feel that, right?
Okay, to take this more lofty religious talk and
Yes.
bring it into what are you, because I want to get into the projects that you're
Okay.
working about and like
Yeah.
what you're doing, which actually I think is really relevant to this. Sorry
Okay,
to the people who are
so-
very turned off
Yeah.
by like
Basically,
Christian talk and stuff, but this actually I think gives a really good basis of like what are you doing now, and like why are you doing it?
okay, so basically, my family
Guys,
and
I'm
I
gonna have to pee again.
I have to too.
Good.
Okay, cut. What if I keep talking about lofty ideas?
Yes, of course you will.
Okay. Well, okay, I think one of the core questions that people ask, especially people that are religious, especially
Yeah.
people that trying to explore their spirituality or whatever, is they ask, is God good?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things, especially now, or probably always, but it
Always.
feels like especially now because of social media,
Yes.
there's a lot of things that feel like the opposite, right? Whether it's like political divisions and racism and Me Too stuff and,
Yeah.
poverty and Amazon burning
Right.
and
Just
wars
bad
in the Middle
stuff.
East. Bad
Just
stuff
bad
going
things.
on.
Horrible,
right.
unthinkable, bad
And
things.
so, right. And so one thing I feel like, one thing I haven't talked about is I felt like from when I was younger, like it was put on my heart. I feel like God might have put on my heart this this care for justice, right? For like, why aren't things better? Like, as humans, shouldn't we have a role in like alleviating some of the suffering of our fellow humans? Isn't that like part of what this is about as humans? And so, but then this, so the question comes like, is God good? All of this badness, how can God be good? It doesn't seem to make logical sense. If God's in control, how can he be good? Because that means if he's in control, that means he's causing bad things.
Did
So,
not he
I
know?
mean, right.
Right.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
That is interesting, and I don't want to make people angry about my thoughts on that, but no. But the question is God good? And so our family, my wife and kids and I, we sold our house. We got this trailer and we started out on this adventure. And one of the things, one of the reasons for this adventure was I want to learn. I want to see the goodness of God in the land of the living. There's like a verse about that, right? Like where are there people that their faith is moving them, that they feel like even God is moving them to do things for their neighbors, for other people, that is good, that is reversing the death, right? Like there's so much death.
Yeah.
Where are there people out there that are moved by this mysterious spirit of God
Yeah.
to be part of the process of reversing all the death we see, both metaphorical and literal. And so it started with, I think, with me and Aaron, we're like, we didn't really have words for it at the time, I don't think, but part of it's like, we want to see. I want to see. Not like I want to make a film, like I want to see.
Yeah.
I want to find these people, you know? And so that's what we started with is, and then it's like, let's make films, let's make short documentary or performance piece films that explore these ideas of like, is there justice on the earth? Or how do we work towards justice? And how are we moved by this mysterious spirit of God to care about these things? Like, where do these things intersect? You know, and so that's kind of those are some of the questions that we started with. And so we started by working with a guy named Bob Ekblad. And that was the first film we did. We had a plan to do like 10 short films. As of today, we've done 2. And I've got a third one that I filmed on today.
Nice.
But the first one is the longest. And it was with a guy named Bob Ekblad out of Burlington, Washington. And he kind of personifies this whole idea of that he believes in the goodness of God, and he embodies that goodness. And then he works with migrant workers, with people in jail, especially immigrants that are in jail, and with a lot of Spanish-speaking families in Skagit Valley, since it's got a large Latino population. And he and a couple other people started this organization where they started like a church, and they started a advocacy group to help people get like legal aid for immigration status and stuff like that. They started a Bible study in jail that's about liberation, like liberation. I don't want to say liberation theology, but that's kind of the idea, but that's a nuanced conversation too. But so he and some other people started this thing, and that's part of the story. But you have to watch the film to hear the rest of the story, because some crazy stuff starts happening that is pretty weird, and that like I don't want to say paranormal, but some weird stuff happens for good. Like people claim to be healed, right. But he's outside of this like quote unquote faith healing world. Right. There's like, I'm sure you've heard, there's these Christians, prosperity gospel or whatever, you name it, you claim it. If you say you want healing, you just, you say in Jesus' name and you're healed. And, he was skeptical of all that, of course, because he's like basically a revolutionary. He like lived in South America during like the Iran-Contra crisis and was an advocate for at Washington, D.C. against what Reagan was doing, killing tons of indigenous people in Latin America and all this. He fought against all this kind of stuff. And then he ends up having these experiences. You'll have to watch the film to find out. And it kind of changes kind of things. And, there's these reports that people, have been healed from liver disease, that were alcoholics, and their backs are feeling, and so I just was so inspired by how weird the story was, and how kind of it did seem to, kind of touch this idea of like, are there little places where glimpses of life are defeating death that we see? And so that was the first story. The second one was a performance piece with a guy named Adam Thomason, super talented filmmaker in his own right. He's done some really cool work with like the refugee crisis over in like Somalia and stuff like that, and you should watch his stuff. But he wrote a performance piece, and so we recorded that, and that's what the second one is. And then we got a third one come up here that's really, really exciting, but you'll have to wait to find out. That's some of the stuff we do. I still do motion design as like my day job,
right?
While we're traveling and stuff. So if you need motion design,
Fred's the best, so hit him up.
Really good.
Really good. Yes.
And then I've also been writing like screenplays.
Nice.
Which is really fun.
Yeah.
For fun, and I've also been trying to grow use this time to grow as a director.
Yeah.
So branch out beyond motion graphics into
Mhm.
like, I got to do some of it at Faith Life, but try to get beyond that into like, what's it mean to be a better director? What's it mean to, work with on narrative pieces, like movies.
Right.
And so I've loved that process of learning how to write, trying to learn to write better and learn to direct. And that's kind of, when I talk about that Faith Life was like college, I'm almost treating this as like, oh, this is like master's. I'm getting my
Yep.
master's now.
Exactly.
Out on the road in an Airstream.
Yep.
But that's like the work part of it. Besides that, it's just really fun to be traveling around with our family and to get to stay at a bunch of friends and family's houses. And, our kids get to experience living in the desert and wild horses going by and starry nights and with campfires and we've kind of reversed the idea of going camping to we go housing.
Yeah.
So like when we like go stay at someone's house, like, oh, we're
Right.
going housing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I just can't, I can't say enough about what being a husband and dad does to you. Like being a father starts to like, I think at least for me, it's been somewhat healing in terms of like, like we talked about in the beginning, you see the wonder that your kids have and it makes you hungry for that again. You're like, maybe I've lost something that I can rediscover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody should be more like kids.
Yep. I think so.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
What is like a big takeaway from this last year as you've been meeting people and hearing about, because the thing is like there are so many people who've completely dedicated their lives to helping other people that no one ever hears about.
Oh yeah, that's so true.
A lot of the time it's because these people are really dedicated to helping the people in front of them. They're on the front lines actually making a difference in potentially only like a handful of people, like tens of people's lives. But these people were like either going to be dead or in jail forever or horrible situations that they've completely helped transform these people's lives. And it's super cool to me to see you, stepping into that and like on your own wanting to learn about it, but then sharing those stories with more people. Because, dude, like my hopes and dreams would be that we stop talking about the horrible people and the death and destruction and chaos, which I think you hit it when you said it earlier, that it feels that way, like it's worse, when in reality, like it's kind of better than it's ever been.
That's true. Yeah.
It used to be
like
horrid.
Murder rates have gone down and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like our presidents have been killed before.
Right.
That's how bad it used to be. Like people, like the genocides that have happened throughout all of history. This isn't some new thing that evil people are doing horribly evil things. Like that has happened throughout all of written history.
Right.
And in fact, there's so many amazing good things happening recently. And like literally the world population coming up and not out of poverty, but like the poverty line has literally been lifted up.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of hopeful people that the whole world might not be in poverty in not that long of the future. And like clean water potentially in our lifetime will be available to every single human on planet Earth. That's never remotely been close.
Right.
So all of these things that are so good, but it's like people just love tragedy, like to look at it, to like just be like, oh wow, look how bad that is. And it's too bad. I don't know what that is about humans, but that's a long way of just kind of looping around and around to ask you, what has this last year kind of taught you and shown you, and what could other people take away from it?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, some of it's just really simple and really personal. I feel like God has been saying, I'm good, through this all, like has been like that promise of go, almost like he was like, go out and discover that I'm good.
Hmm.
And I feel like, that's been part of the process. And I actually have less answers than I ever did before, like
Mhm.
theologically or philosophically. I feel like I can explain less. I actually have more questions. It sounds super, super like stereotypically like, man, I just have like more questions now. And
Absolutely.
like, but yeah, I feel like,
I think that goes back to earlier. You said that if people were allowed into safe environments where they were allowed to ask questions openly, honestly, like kids,
yes.
and it
Yes.
wasn't ridiculed
Oh, that's huge.
as
'cause-
like you're
yes.
stupid or wrong, or how do you not know this? We've already gone over this. How can you
Mhm.
still not get it?
Mm-hmm.
And if as adults, if we could be okay with not knowing, because we
Mhm.
don't. Like
There's a lot of
nobody
things
actually
we don't
knows.
know, yeah.
No, most. The more you'll
that's true.
learn, the more
Mhm.
I'm so convinced. The older and older and older I get, and the more and more and more I learn, the more won't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a bad way though,
Mm-hmm.
in a really freeing, and like I'm getting more okay
Mm-hmm.
with being able to look my kids in the eyes and say, there's no way that
Mm-hmm.
I might not ever know this,
Mm-hmm.
and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that is something that societies need. Like
Mm.
people need to, it's back to that same thing. It's like wonder and vulnerability. What were you saying? Wonder and you said like two things that were really good. And then I added vulnerability to it. But
yeah.
that idea where it's like,
beauty,
yeah,
wonder and beauty. Yeah. Like, there's some quote by some like Eastern Orthodox priest or something that says like beauty will save the world. And that sounds like some Hallmark card or something.
Right.
But I don't mean beauty like women who
right.
look hot or something.
Yeah.
I mean like,
Or like a picture of Hawaii
right.
or something.
I mean like this idea of like when you see like a person stuck in some like in poverty or in abuse and they get free,
Mm-hmm.
or somebody that's been wounded gets healed.
Mm-hmm.
That is beauty. That is resurrection. That's why that's resurrection so important, because it's like whenever life conquers death, like that's one of the most beautiful things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. There's something you said earlier. That was when you said, what did you learn? It
Yeah.
was really practical.
Yeah.
I think before we left, I was really connected in social media to like Twitter, and mainly Twitter and Instagram, and very like up to date about like all the latest tragedies and horrible things. And for my own like mental health, I had to disconnect, especially from Twitter. I'm sorry, I don't know if everyone knows, but I probably unfollowed everyone on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it's not because I didn't agree with them.
Yeah.
And it's not because I can't handle difficult questions or people disagreeing. It's the volume.
Yeah.
The volume of tragedy, the volume. And I feel like I went cocoon. I feel like I went cocoon a little bit, like a caterpillar. Like, okay, I know there's a lot of bad stuff out there. I know, but if I'm going to like be transformed to be able to address any of that bad stuff, if I'm going to be a person who can address any of that bad stuff, I have to be at a spot, I have to slow down a bit and be at a spot where I'm like healthy enough to think, and to even these film projects, it's like it's a way of addressing an issue. Maybe you're thinking through it slowly, instead of, because a lot of times we see a tweet and we're like, oh, I have to have an answer to that.
Yeah.
I have to have an opinion on that, right? Because we're like, this is the age of opinion. Like, you have to have an opinion. It's got to be smart enough. It's got to be woke enough. It's got to be cool enough.
It's all speculating,
but
too.
And some of it's posturing too, right? Like,
yeah.
And so it's like, okay, like, I want more than an opinion. Like, I want to, like, what about ideas of like grieving things? What about ideas of like listening? And anyway, that's one of the things I learned. I'm still learning that.
Listening.
I'm still learning that. But that's one of the things I think I learned that I had to very practically is I had to disconnect to be able to use my energy to be able to be constructive, to be able to build something. And so like I'll listen to the news like on the, once a week or whatever on like NPR politics or whatever, but I try to limit it to that right now because like I know the problems,
right.
And it doesn't help me any like freaking out because I know more freaky things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's a season thing. Sometimes you're in a season to be like very up to date with what's happening, but then some seasons you need to like cocoon away and kind of like process and like build.
Yeah.
And so for this season, I think it's been like that. Yeah.
Dude, and I think it's the only thing you want to solve the world's problems right now with me.
Yes, let's do it. Can we do them all?
Yeah, this is literally going to solve every problem in the world. If we all
dang it.
What?
Is this a straw?
That is a straw. See, we're ruining things right now.
Dang it, dude.
The turtles. Dang it.
Oh, man.
But this is, okay, but on a serious note, there are people who are fanatic about the straw, right? And I agree. Yeah. I think it's dumb. I think it's great when I go to Starbucks and there's no straw. I don't need the straw. Whatever.
Yeah.
And I know the ramifications of it.
Hold on real quick. Did you know that on Trump's website you can now buy Trump straws?
Really?
And it's like buy the straw so that the liberals don't take them away or something. Anyway.
No, are
I'm
you watching the news?
No, this is like somebody else. I don't know how I figured this out, but
anyway. We need to fact check this. Mark, you need to look this up.
We need to fact check it.
Mark, look it up.
Trump straws. Anyway.
I'm fact checking this.
Even if you like Trump, that's funny. Like, you got to admit that's taking it maybe a step too far. Anyway, continue. You were talking about the straw thing.
Solving all the problems. Here it is. If every individual person just found one thing that they care about and did something about it consistently, not in a massive, huge way, not in a selling of everything and pursuing this big, grandiose thing where we're trying to make a big impact and whatever. No, stay if you're super happy living like in your house in a neighborhood with the picket fence and you have a pretty regular 9-to-5 job and you have two cars.
This is good.
All of
we
this
need to
stuff.
Talk about this.
And if you're happy with that life, don't change anything about it. Be that person.
Yes.
Be the best at it. Be a good neighbor, blah, 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 all the things. Just find the one thing. If it's whales, please. We're literally we might not have orca whales. Yeah. That's messed up.
That is messed up.
But it's like, are we going to do something about that? Probably not, because we're really focused on other things that we want to help. But here's the thing. It's no less important in my mind, the person who's literally dedicated their entire life to saving the whales. I think that's as important, which a lot of people, especially when it comes to like the planet or animals or any things of that, it's actually way down here. They're just like these crazy hippie people that don't care about people. And it's because there are some who literally like animals more than they like people. There are actually humans who would save an animal before they save a person.
I've heard of such
Here's
things.
the flip. There's a whole lot of humans who will literally let a whole entire species of animals just go extinct because they do not care.
Right.
Even a tiny bit.
Right.
When in reality, all we need to do is do the thing. So you don't want to save the whales. Awesome. Just support the person.
Yeah.
Have empathy for that person.
This is huge. Yeah.
That would do it. If everyone actually just did a little bit.
You got me really excited on something.
It would become a massive amount of change.
There's something that you and I can clarify.
Yeah.
So we sold it all and bought the RV. And I feel like there's some people that are like, that's so righteous of them. Right. Or like.
It's either that or.
Right. Or like.
Reckless.
Or reckless.
People.
Right.
Yes.
No. I want to we need to put that out here now. No. We love adventure. This wasn't like they really sacrificed.
Yeah.
They're really making a sacrifice for their art or for God or whatever the person's no. it was not a sacrifice. There's people out there making sacrifices, but what
Yeah.
we did was not like a sacrifice. We did it because we wanted to. It was
we
had
pushed more into more selfish wants.
right. It was
Which,
an agency.
maybe is like sacrificing on a
Right.
small scale, because what you're talking about is like the people who are really, like, I've met a lot of people who have literally sacrificed their life. They don't do anything for themselves.
Right.
That's like actually sacrificing.
And on that, right? Like you shouldn't feel like you have to
We're
sell.
getting pumped.
Yeah, you
Here we
shouldn't.
go.
You shouldn't feel like you have to sell your house
Yeah,
and move in an RV if that's not like who you were meant to be.
absolutely.
You know, like we need, and first of all, there's seasons. I'll probably live in a house again someday.
Of course,
So,
yeah.
but second of all, like we need people in a house that are stable. Think of this guy that mentored me,
Yeah,
right? Like he was stable. He had
Yeah.
a home. He had a family.
yeah,
And he was emotionally stable, emotionally intelligent. He was like a stable person, and he had the space in his life. He
Yeah.
had the resources. He
yeah.
had
Could
even
you imagine if we rolled up to some kid and was like, "Hey,
Hey,
you wanna?"
jump in?
The parents would be
Right.
like, "Get away from him! Get over here! Stay away from those people!"
Right, exactly.
Like, there's literally things like we can't do because of the lifestyle.
we can't host people.
Right.
We cannot show the level of hospitality
Yes.
that other people
Yeah.
can show.
But in reality, yes, like
Yeah.
that, you experienced that, and I did as well. The cul-de-sac that I grew up in, there's a family that just poured into my life, and yeah, they couldn't have done that if they didn't have they had a bigger house, they had, bigger cars, so they could bring other. I mean, now as a parent who has kids, realizing the cost of kids and the added thoughts of like, oh yeah, we do want a car that could sit like 2 more people. Well, now we just had to buy a way more expensive vehicle. But that's the thought of being able to host and being able to like care about other people. And so and that goes back to, if we literally all just did one thing. For some, I know these families, I've been the byproduct of a family in my neighborhood who did do this to me, where that completely changed my life. And I hope that I have an impact on people's lives as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, if they didn't do that, then myself, I wouldn't be doing all the things that I'm doing. And it's the basic math of like the multiplication of if we just focus on just a couple people, and if that's all we ever do, the ramifications of it are just literally changes everything. The whole world gets affected because of these really meaningful, longer term investments into people, or if they're wanting to save the whales. So for some people, yes, it's you live in just a house that looks exactly like every single other house in the neighborhood, and you want that. You're like pumped about that. People come over to your house on a weekly. The neighbor kids come and hang out at your house. That's like the dream. Then yes, please go all in and don't get deviated by people like us that are just like lily lol and flipping our everything and just being hippies and doing whatever we want to be doing, because sometimes that's really romantic looking, and it's really adventurous. It is all of those things, and it is. That's why I love it.
Yeah.
But to some people, they don't want that. And it's actually interesting hearing you talk, because I'm definitely anti like status quo and blah, blah, blah. Only because I think there's like 70+% of the people on the block should probably sell everything and go do what they want to do. But
Right.
there is actually a larger percentage of people that I really need to have the perspective that you're talking about. Like, I haven't really thought about that. And it's equally, if not more important, that we have those people who are really, really investing in they're not doing some huge they're just doing a really good job of raising their family and like just showing love to some of the people that just so happen to come into their life. They're not like actively going out and like trying to, like what you're doing and like kind of what I'm doing, where we're like going out into the world and like trying to find all these big, big stories.
I got a story on this. Like, I met this guy in LA, and like from the outside, he lives in this giant, like 15,000 square foot home, and drives this pretty nice big car with a lot of seating, and so here I am in this trailer, and it'd be really easy for me to be like, this guy is sold out.
Yeah.
He's just totally sold out to the empire or whatever. Yeah. Come to find out, this guy has like 5 special needs kids he's adopted.
Whoa.
And they he like cares for them that nobody else wanted.
Yeah.
And this isn't his home. Somebody else said, I love what you're doing. Here's the keys to my house for 5 years.
Whoa.
Keep blessing these kids. And so from the outside, he looks like Mr. LA, but then
so quick and easy to judge.
I'm just like, dude, you are the adventurous one.
Yeah.
Like, who's more adventurous, right?
Him. 1,000,000%.
Right. Like, so like things aren't what they seem, right? But also like if you live in like a...
Dude, that's what happens too when you really go all in. Like, obviously, to adopt 5 special needs kids, there's
I don't know how many. It might have been like 2, but anyway, it
any
was a
amount.
Lot. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a really deep-rooted core. This is a purpose to go and after something, which is like what everyone really needs to focus. Almost all of their energy on is constantly being, why do I do any of the things that I do? You should always be asking that. And when you get to the point, and then you won't know it, but once you start feeling your North Star, just go towards it. It will become clearer and clearer. And then when you are doing that, one, you're not being normal anymore. So you're really being yourself. You're following this feeling, this wonder. You start going after it. You adopt, like he adopts one kid. That was a scary, hard, emotional whole process of everything, and then they have another one, and however many more they adopt, at which point then he meets people who are like, here's the keys to my house. Like, right. What is this life that is happening right here?
Right.
But it's because of one individual who said, I just have this feeling and desire and this wonder and these thoughts, and he went after it and started pursuing it, which then other people saw it, were inspired by it, had more means, crazy stuff.
Think about this rich dude who owns the house.
Seriously.
Think about him. He's a hero, right?
That's
but
awesome.
From the outside, he looks like a total sellout.
Yeah.
Right? So like if you're like one of these people that's like, I think I could make a lot of money, but like you actually care about people, you have a huge opportunity, maybe responsibility too, but you have a huge opportunity to like be such a blessing in people's lives, like in amazing ways.
Yeah.
And that's one of the lies we got to dispel about like you said, like, well, the romantic lifestyle of sacrificing it all. Like there's people like this dude who's like, oh yeah, this $2 million home.
Right.
You guys can
5 years.
Here you go.
Take
yours.
100%. And that's totally the whole thing. If we all just stop judging each other so instantaneously and so hard, and we all just focused on like what we want to do and why we want to do it, and then we all had empathy for everybody else, including like the dude who lives in a mansion, instead of judging that person right off the bat, like support them and have understanding for them.
What if there's another dude in the mansion and he's always wanted to do something like that,
right?
But he feels like he can't be his true self.
Yeah,
and do that. Like, and like, how are we going to get him liberated? Maybe, like maybe he needs liberation just as much as, some.
Yes. Like everyone does.
Right. But
exactly.
Like, maybe deep in his heart, he's, the seed's been planted of like, I want to do something like that.
Yeah.
Like how would that change things if all those people,
it would change everything.
It would. And because we hate on the rich so much, right? And understandably, because they do a lot of dumb things.
Right.
But like there's so much opportunity there, right, to create community and create like new
Exactly. That's what it is, man. Yep, it's all very basic. It's preschool.
Oh, do we solve the world's problems?
Yeah,
Okay,
I thought we
cool.
did.
Cool.
We just need to
Good.
find out what we want to do it. You don't have to be like insane about it. Just do something. And then we all need to not judge each other so much and really try to understand and have relationships with people that you might not expect, like the rich guy that you feel is like a douche. And then you go to find out, oh, never mind. He doesn't even live in his mansion that he paid for. He gave it to somebody else.
Then you're
who's the douche
You're right,
now?
exactly. That's what you...
And it's like, and that's not always the case. To the flip, there are the people who are doing things all out of selfish reasonings, aren't helping anybody.
Oh, yeah.
And they even more so need us to have understanding and approach them and be a part of their life
Somewhere.
and to share stories, to hear their story, like to listen.
Now we're getting somewhere.
This is where you said this earlier. We need to listen a lot more than we do talk. We need to listen to all people of every area and just really actually just listen. And back to being like, we also just need to be okay with not knowing and just listen. There it is.
That was good. I'm gonna take a picture of you. I'm not really gonna do that because this is only like
You could.
ISO 400.
Oh, it'd be
so
dark.
It'd be kind of dark.
Well, we kind of just went all over the place.
I hope that's okay.
That's great.
Okay, cool.
I mean, is there anything else?
I mean, I could talk about anything.
I know.
For like a long time.
This
but I
is the
think
great
that's
part
all.
about this.
I could talk about film photography for like.
Oh, here it is. Fact checked.
Fact check. We have a fact checker?
Yeah, dude.
Wow.
Mark, thanks. Oh, you're not lying. Trump straws pack of 10, $15. These are expensive straws. Are these reusable? Hey, look at this. Please, they're BPA free, reusable and recyclable. Oh, I knew it.
Wow.
You heard a story of somebody trying to make it sound like Trump has plastic straws, that he's trying to kill all the.
Well, these are reusable.
They're reusable straws.
Aren't these reusable?
Yes, of course, anything could be reused, but that's not the point of these. I find that really, really funny.
Don't they say Trump on them?
I don't know. It doesn't have a picture.
It's
oh,
so-
there it is.
Yeah.
It literally says Trump. It's a
so
red straw that says Trump.
So every liquid you drink will be filtered through. It's gonna be Trump water.
Do you see though?
Trump-
Do you
yeah.
see that quick?
That's
Trying to
good.
like tear down somebody.
I mean,
And then there's a little bit more to the story. I'm not like
I don't
saying I'm
know,
in
like-
favor of all of this. I'm just saying that it was interesting to hear a story that I was like, I don't know. I kind of want to call BS on that. Go find out it's a reusable. So very close to the truth of the story, but not what it was made to be like.
like, look at this picture. You should go see the picture. There's a lot of politics going on in this photo. I mean, I'm gonna be honest here. You have a Trump straw and a Trump cup,
Yep.
and you have a young African American girl
Yes.
drinking out of it.
Which is what his biggest voting
Biggest
demographic,
base,
right?
Yeah,
Is
huge
the
base.
African American young population.
Right. Like, thankfully,
And people who want to use reusable straws.
I haven't slept enough last night to get angry. But like, there's so much in this picture.
But you got to give it to them. They're reusable straws, right?
Every straw is reusable.
No, what are you trying to?
Who have you ever tried to wash a straw? You get in there
Yes.
with like
no,
a
we
little.
have reusable.
We have
straws.
metal ones too. And
See,
I
you have
hate,
some.
I
That's
hate,
different
honestly,
than this.
I hate washing them.
I agree.
So no one's
The
gonna reuse
reusable
these.
straws. Is
No one's gonna reuse
Well,
it.
they're more than $1 each. I think you would.
Wow, that is expensive,
I'm not gonna throw that away.
man.
And it's your pride and joy. It says Trump. Everyone can know all the time.
I think I'd be more into it if the proceeds went to support, like education for
Yeah.
like inner city kids or something. But I
Because of the photo.
I think it
The
goes
exploiting.
I think the proceeds go to
His campaign.
his campaign.
Of course they do. That's how it all
So,
works.
Yeah.
I like
so.
how we just went right for it. Mostly religion talk, and then we go into politics to end it. It's
Those
great.
are like the most interesting topics, though.
I
Right?
agree. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
okay.
I'm still wanting you to just admit that it wasn't as bad as what you were making it sound
Did
like.
I make it sound bad?
You made it sound like I was going to buy a pack of straws that I'm just going to throw away, almost for the point of being like an American
Well-
that just wants to throw garbage plastic into the ocean.
Did you read what it says here?
No,
Qu-
I didn't
quote-
read.
Quote, liberal paper straws don't work. Stand with President Trump and buy your pack of recyclable straws today.
Have you used the paper straws?
They're horrible. Yeah, it's true.
Unusable. and
They're really
The
bad.
coffee shops who use paper straws, Mark can tell you. He knows a lot about coffee. It completely changes the entire taste of the coffee that you're drinking. So you're paying this
yeah.
premium money
Yeah.
on coffee that was handled so beautifully by these farmers who were working so hard
Okay.
in the hills of
Yep.
Nicaragua.
Yep.
And then you get all the way to this barista
Wait a
who's
second. Stop.
masterfully
What are you
pouring
doing? What
coffee.
are you doing drinking coffee through a straw anyway?
And then iced coffee. And then it comes through this paper straw and it tastes like paper.
I agree. So, you know what? To circle
Trump is on to something here.
No, to
which,
circle it
By
around-
the way, is not Trump at all. It's just a marketing agency.
totally. It's circle all around here.
They're so right.
We have
Don't
solutions.
take this from them.
You know, we have solutions. Plastic's not the solution. It's killing sea turtles, right?
yes.
And among other things,
We need to
microplastic.
get
you know.
rid of these straws. We're not using straws, people.
Plastic's not the solution. Paper is definitely not the solution.
No, it's ruining
So
life.
there's other options. Like we humans, we've been to the moon.
Seriously, we're going to Mars.
We're going to
people.
Mars. We can
Cars
solve.
drive themselves.
We can solve the straw thing. You know, like there's
Oh my gosh.
wood. We could use wood, maybe. I don't know, glass. I heard that in India,
Yeah.
there's certain towns where when you get a coffee or a tea, they give it to you in a thin ceramic cup. You drink it and then you just throw it on the ground. That's in India.
Wait, what happens?
It's dirt because it's raw
Oh, ceramic,
It's
yes.
raw earth ceramic.
Gotcha.
They fire it quick. You drink your
Do
thing.
we need
you-
another
you
fact
just,
check on this?
you just
Mark
throw
is
it-
our fact checker
You just
today.
throw it on the
When
ground.
we start talking politics, we need a fact checker.
They're doing that in India, and this is like poor communities in India.
How awesome would it be to be able to just walking downtown, finish a drink, and just smash it and just
Right.
keep walking?
Right. I'm sorry.
That would just make life better too.
Yeah. I'm trying to
Imagine if
remember
we're all going around and we can smash
the stress
the
level.
stress level
would
of
just
just
be
like
so reduced.
everyone
Yeah.
would be like, today was just you go get your drink, which is already like this thing
It's
to
in
like
a,
make
it's in
you
a
feel
cup.
comfortable.
It's not in paper. It's in
Yeah.
ceramic. Yeah.
And then you drink it, and then before you walk into your home, you just smash it on the ground,
yeah. That would,
and then you walk
So-
inside. How can you not
Yeah.
be smiling at that point?
Yep.
That
So, like,
okay? That fixes
what
everything too.
Also, what about bamboo? Why don't we just drink out of like thin
Little
pieces of bamboo?
we
or
could start a
something?
whole bamboo farm where we
And-
specialize in growing these perfect straw shaped.
It would do
bamboo.
carbon sequestration, right? Like it would like take carbon out of the atmosphere.
I have
Like,
to pee again.
should we just be done with this? Are we done?
We need to actually end it though, but I have to pee.
Okay, we can end it here real quick. So, in conclusion,
Yeah, we need to end it.
it's the little changes. Or no, stop. In conclusion, you can be the change.
in this world. It's up to you.
It's
What
up
does
to you.
Smokey say? Smokey the bear?
It's up to you to prevent turtle death. So, like,
That's okay. Just replace the fire with every problem in the world.
that sounds stressful.
That's way too much. Okay, no, that's the opposite of what the point was. The point was to pick the one thing.
Oh yeah, that's right. Pick the one thing, and do the small thing.
Yeah. And have, dude, I was just looking up the word. I'm going to loop this in to make sense.
Okay.
The word intelligence,
Intelligentsia.
which basically, oh man, I got to pee so bad. We're going to get through this. I just want to actually get the definition because it was interesting. Oh no, it didn't save. I'm losing it. I can't. I gotta go pee, guys.
We can't.
We're gonna have to loop back.
Well, how do we end this train? How do we stop the train?
We'll get there. We want to land the plane, but I have to ask the question: do you think Trump will win this next election?
I don't know these kind of questions. I don't know the
You're the
answers.
one who brought him all up.
Okay, do you
and
want
hating them on for making reusable straws?
do you want my unemotional like fact-based opinion
Yes.
or like
both? I just want whatever. What popped in your head when I said it? Yes or no?
So this is no judgment. There's nothing of emotion or judgment
Love
connected to
this.
it. But just looking at
yes.
if the economy
uh-huh.
goes up, he will get elected again. If the economy
Interesting.
crashes, he will not get elected.
Why?
Sadly, it seems like that's like a pattern, right? Of like presidents. I mean, this isn't my idea.
Yeah.
So, of like
This is something
presidents,
you've
when
heard.
economies go up,
Yep.
they tend to get second terms, I think.
Yep.
Somebody can fact check me on this, and then when they go down. So I don't think it has anything to do with who the president is, with good or bad things they've done.
Yep.
I think so much of our political system is motivated by money.
Right.
And so money talks or whatever, money decides who gets elected, kind of.
Interesting.
That's just my take on it.
I think he would win either way.
I don't think he would win if we went into a 2008 kind of recession. But
That's like the whole backbone of his. I think people have a lack of understanding and what we're talking about, empathy for almost half of America
that's true.
and their feelings,
That's true.
which are really valid,
Yeah,
which
that's true.
is they feel that they've been forgotten about,
Mhm.
that they aren't cared for,
That's true.
that
Yeah.
they're losing their identity, that they're all of these things. And instead of what we've just talked about for all this time and being like, I see you, I hear you, I can actually understand where you're coming from,
Mhm.
and let's unify instead of like, you're an idiot.
Oh yeah.
That's the dumbest
Yeah.
thing I've ever heard because it's all wrong, because I know way better than you do. When we're talking about feelings, like people are feeling a certain way, and they really are, and lots of people went through really hard times. And so if we could all just forget about the political powers at play and just be humans with each other and just be like, I totally validate your feelings and I see you and I care about you and your family and where you're going to work and how that's going to pan out and how you're going to retire, because you might not be able to currently, and that's messed up. And we actually can help each other a lot more than like a president.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't matter.
That's actually that's an interesting point.
But it would matter more if we actually helped each other.
That idea is very in line with one of the few things I feel like I've learned on this trip so far, is that I have gotten to hang out with a bunch of people that voted for Trump.
Yeah.
And in Washington you don't get that experience, right?
Right.
So, but in California and Arizona you get that experience, and I love them. Like
Yeah.
I don't hate them anymore or whatever. Not
Right.
that I like hated them, but like I
Yeah.
have no like
Had ill feelings.
I don't have ill
toward-
feelings towards them.
Yeah.
There's some things I don't agree with them, but I
Right.
don't care about. I don't want that to stop. Yeah, I don't want that to
Yeah.
stop us from talking or
Mm-hmm.
from. I was even. Yeah, I mean, I think the difference is like when there's some people that are so full of hate
Yeah.
that you can't talk to, that are
Right.
so full, and that, that's a barrier.
Yeah.
But like for most people that voted for Trump, I might disagree with their decisions and some of their politics, but like thankfully I've been able to, to hang out with a lot of them on our trip.
Yeah.
And it's just been so awesome just to see, just to kind of break down some of those walls or those.
Yeah.
I had preconceptions.
Yeah.
I had stereotypes.
Right.
Well, they probably don't really care about poor people or something
Yep.
like that, and that's not true. And so breaking down some of those things, like you said, is just like you said, listening. Yeah, I guess that comes back to us. Like, where are the spots in us that we're like, I'm never gonna listen to, a Trump supporter's opinion on something, or I don't even want to use the word opinion, but they're like, what did you say? Their feelings. That's important, right? Why do you feel, right? Because people are motivated by their feelings. They're not motivated by their brain.
Not really.
I mean, it is their brain,
ultimately,
but not by their perceived thoughts. Yeah.
And if we all just actually just got rid of all these made up things and just looked at the individual in front of us and if we just listened to their story, because they're just a human being, all goes away. Because then you hear about the husband who died, and then she was left with 2 kids, and then remarried later, but then has like drug addiction and industry that
the manufacturing
income, went away,
yeah.
and all of these things, only then to be bombarded over and over and over again with like, you're just wrong. And it's like, there's nothing wrong about this story. That's just their story. That's who they are. That's what they experienced, and that's how they feel. It's not going to do anything to just write them off.
Well, actually, it is going to do something. It's dangerous.
Yeah, it's a whole.
If you start to write off people that feel, whether you think their feelings are legitimate or not, if you start to write off people who feel like they've been injured, or feel like society doesn't care about them, that is the number one place probably where radicalization can take place.
Totally.
Right? You look at even the Middle East and stuff. Yeah. Like, if you want to radicalize a people, if you want them to like get guns and start like a revolution, or if you want people to get very racist, if you want to radicalize people into racism, then probably the easiest way to do that is to like vilify them. Yeah. Right? Because like when you vilify people, there's going to be resentment, and there's going to be defensiveness, and you're going to create a monster that you never meant to create it. Yeah.
And we're using like the current political as an example of this because it's just really easy to see. But we're talking about with anything, everywhere, across all borders and anything. We're just talking about people. And that was exactly it. Exactly. Because you just can quickly, the word dehumanize sounds strong, but essentially like you're no longer looking at an individual human being as like a mother or a father or a son or daughter or brother, sister. None of those things. You stop seeing them that way. That's just dangerous, period. And that's it. All other things are irrelevant. If you can't see a person for them being a person,
it's true. Yeah.
Then you're only going to be able to cause damage, not love and hope and any of those things.
I think there are some caveats to what we're saying, because I want to bring a little nuance in real quick. Is like, it's about feeling like safe to like, if you're a black person in America and you've had 400 plus years of a racism experience, then like entering to what we're saying, maybe it's too big of a wall to enter into a conversation with somebody like you were just talking about. Like, maybe it's not safe even for you to open yourself up to that kind of vulnerability, because you might get wounded even more, like, so maybe, so I totally get why people are like, I don't even want to talk to a Trump supporter if it is, or I don't want to, I don't want to have quote unquote sympathy for the devil, if you will, because like some people have been wounded so much, like they can't trust, their trust hasn't been earned, like if I was a black man, it would be difficult for me to want to be vulnerable with like somebody who's like a staunch far right white person who thinks, the Western tradition of was of white people ruling the world through colonialism was a good thing. If it would be hard for me to talk to that person, because I wouldn't feel safe around them.
Right.
And I get that. So there's some of that has to be worked through. And like, you're right, like listening can solve some of that.
Yeah.
But
And I'm not talking about listening to their viewpoints on the world and how that should
you're
be.
talking about
I'm
like
talking about
their
the
story.
core basics.
They're like, oh,
their
you're
story.
a dad.
Yeah.
You went through this experience. Your
Yep.
dad died when you were 12.
Exactly.
That must have been difficult.
Because what this does is it breaks all the walls down.
You're right.
That person who
Right.
is a person that would typically be a hard person to have a conversation with, all the way to the point where it might actually feel not safe to be with. If you approach it in the way of like, man, where'd you grow up? What were your parents like? What was that like? How did you like sports? Awesome. Did you? Oh, cool. Oh, your brother died. Holy crap. Like, I've never experienced something like that. And then you go through it. All of a sudden, this really horrible person just became a human.
Right.
And the things that just went through their brain psychologically is they just shared with somebody a lot of deep, meaningful information. That's just their story. So it's neither right nor wrong. It's just what it is. And now if you just share your story, not what you believe in or care, none of those things. I grew up here, this and that, and did all these things and blah, blah, blah. That's just bonding. Like that
It is,
just is a way to unify through story.
It breaks down barriers.
Which can not instantaneously in this polarizing of a situation of these polarizing different people coming together, you probably aren't going to just then start talking politics.
Right.
No.
Right.
And don't.
Right.
Like
Like
you
you
need to
probably shouldn't.
build trust. Like you're saying, no one's going to be vulnerable in that situation because there's no trust yet. The only way to get trust is going to be time. And so people just need to get the intelligence of like, we don't have to come in swinging.
Right.
We can come in more vulnerable, but be smart about your vulnerability. You can't just
Right.
swing in with like your political opinions. Gauge the situation. But most everybody has a story.
It's true.
And
You
if
know,
you ask them, they'll tell you it.
that's a good segue into maybe landing this plane
Let's do it.
of that's the power of art, of film.
Yeah.
A film and photography and painting and music is that it's a story medium. And so it creates that empathy.
Right.
So like that's why I do think like quote unquote Hollywood, you know, or YouTube or whatever the storytelling medium is,
Yeah.
has such a powerful role in even beginning to help heal some of the wounds.
Yeah.
Right? Like because the stories we tell ourselves as a culture are what like shape our future.
Yeah.
You know, like they shape how we see ourselves and stuff, and how we see the other, and so like, yeah, there's so it's set. If somebody's wanting to get into to film, into photography, into like it's such an important role because they can help, you know, bring healing to the stories they tell can either divide or bring together. Like when Birth of a Nation came out, that's a movie from the like, what is it, the 30s about the Ku Klux Klan.
Okay.
So so the Ku Klux Klan had died out. Birth of a Nation came out. This is actually Birth of a Nation came out in like the 30s. That movie,
people together.
the movie rebirthed the
Yeah.
Ku Klux Klan. And I think it ended up with like lynching. Lynching happened because of the movie. That piece of art, that's how important film is. This isn't, I'm not coming up with this idea. This is what Spike Lee, I think, was talking about in his interview with Black Klansman, that's how powerful art is. That it can either do that, it can rebirth a hate group.
Yeah.
Or it could do the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why filmmaking is not a frivolous thing, you know, or like media creation. Art is not a frivolous thing. It has like dire consequences, and it's very like serious business.
Yeah.
And also,
Or can be.
It can be, or it can be fun.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Which is great too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, that's why I do what I do.
I figure that's why you do what you do.
That's why you
Yeah.
do what you do.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's every. Oh, yep. We could keep talking about lots of things. I think that's great that we just spent all this time basically talking about religion and politics. Might as well get that out the door.
Boom, done.
Stamp,
All
done.
right.
I'm glad to have done
Cool.
that with Fred,
Cool.
not somebody else. Anything you would want to say? Anything that we didn't talk about that we missed that's important? People should know.
Well, I just think like, well, if you've made it this far,
Yep.
then you are a very patient
Congratulations.
person. So thank you.
It's some fruits of the spirit showing through here.
Yes. Good tie-in. Yep. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
That's it. We're out. Oh, wait. Where can people see your stuff?
Yeah. The Wind Vein Project. It's on the screen right here.
Probably not. Maybe.
I got this idea from my wife.
Mark is saying yes. So
I got this idea from my wife. She once did this in a video, and I didn't put the website, and so she's just like, anyway, it's pretty good.
Sweet.
So yeah, the Wind Vein Project. You can also follow me on 3 Instagrams.
3 Instagrams.
Yeah, there's me, Fred, as the motion side, like the job director in motion. That's Fred Sprinkle at Fred Sprinkle. Then there's at the Wind Vein Project for this thing we're doing with our family. And then there's Chemical Splendor, where I post
Nice.
all the random pictures I take with this old film camera. And that is my secret passion.
Yes.
That does not make any money.
It's just for
and
fun.
I only post like 1/10 of the pictures I take. And all my favorite pictures I've never posted because they're just my kids doing goofy things.
Nice.
And it gives me such joy.
Awesome. All right, we're in then. That's it. We're out.
Done.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh.
Peace.